Hi.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the FitZen Project, where I'm your host, Rachel Fitzpatrick. And today I want to introduce you to one of the biggest badass women I know. Like, Caressa Dunphy is the voice behind the Badass Thriving podcast, but she's also like the soul behind the Badass Thriving. She is a military veteran, a mom, a dietitian, and totally one of courage, resilience, and radical self trust. Her story alone is one that gave me just probably about a dozen chills throughout my body as she was speaking, where she has turned her pain into purpose. And she also helps others by providing a private practice. It is called A is for Avocados. So she not only has healed herself, she's outreaching to other people. And I cannot wait for you to listen to the how and why and her whole entire story that's coming up in this podcast. It's raw, it's real, it's powerful, and I believe you're going to find the light and inspiration just as I did. But first, let me ask you, can you do me a favor? Can you just pause the episode, go down and give a 5-star review and write a comment? I would absolutely love the feedback. And not only does your review and your commentary help the show thrive and be seen, it also provides me a way to get people on and keep it going. And I absolutely can't be more grateful than I am for those who give the love back in return. So thank you, thank you, thank you ahead of time and to all the ones that have already done so. And if you'd love to join the FitZen community, let me invite you to subscribe to the free newsletter that I send out once a week. And I just get to shower my community with a ton of love. You get some personal insights from me, and you also get some tips and tricks with yoga and meditation, and not to mention the awesomeness of the podcast directly linking you to the show. So, without further ado, let's get back to Caressa, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I did.
Thank thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm so honored.
Oh my gosh, I am honored. I listened to your first podcast and I was just like, I want to ask all these questions.
Please do.
Oh, Caressa, that was so great. Your podcast is thriving,
The
badass
badass
thriving.
thriving. Yep.
Yeah. And you have such a story that I feel like a lot of people can resonate with. And I feel like a lot of people may carry shame around if they resonate with it. And ooh, I'm tingling already just talking about it. And I'm just like, could you? I don't even know. I want you to begin where you want to begin, and then I'm going to flow with you on all of it because this
Sure.
is this is going to be great. I can feel it already.
Do you want me to just sort of give the whole backstory so your listeners know, or where would you like me to start?
What is calling on you? So, you know what? I would love for my listeners to go out and listen to your story as part one, and then this be your part two. I want to know if we're in part two of your story, like how can you overview what you had and then going in from there. Let's do that.
Yeah, so I had a very odd start to life. Right from a very small age, I remember being told that I wasn't wanted and that I wasn't planned for, but I was still like quote unquote the miracle child despite three different contraceptions. And so at a very young age, that being held over my head that my maternal biologic had to go on bed rest because she started going into labor when she was only 3 months pregnant with me, and so she had to put all of her hopes and dreams on hold. At 4 and 5, I started being told I was too bossy, I'm too much of a know-it-all, I'm too controlling. Those are all amazing qualities if you're a boy and you're a man, and those are leadership qualities, right? But as a
Mhm.
girl, being told in a very derogatory way, right? Like those are not okay. And so at 4 and 5, I remember being like the vocabulary I had was that felt yucky to me. That didn't feel nice. It felt gross, right? At 4 and 5, you don't have an extensive vocabulary to really say, how this is hurting your feelings. And so, I'm a May baby, so I'm a Taurus. I'm very stubborn. I was born on a Friday the 13th at 4:44 p.m. So like, I don't know how much more magical you can get.
I'm like, "You're magic, baby."
I'm magic. I'm a unicorn.
Yeah.
So at 4 and 5, I started making myself small because I knew that I was never going to be loved and accepted as being this big, bright, stubborn, beautiful unicorn of a child that I was. And so I remember just being smaller than I wanted to be. I just remember being told for so long, like that kind of shame of who I was. And so I was homeschooled all 12 years and I wanted to go to school so bad. I wanted to go to school and actually attend a real school, but I was not allowed to. And so at 12, we adopted another child and I have an older biological and then I have several adopted child siblings, but it was one of those like at 12, I stopped being parented because now the focus wasn't on me. Now there was a new kid in the household. And so my schooling got put on hold at the time when algebra is happening and all of those like heavier subjects, right? And so I had to start parenting myself. And I was a country girl, and so all the chores and the responsibilities of having a farm fell to me, as well as I was the built-in babysitter. So, like, I didn't have a childhood. I didn't have, that carefree, magical childhood experience that, you get to hear about from a lot of people. And I just remember at 16 being so frustrated with this homeschool curriculum back in the early 2000s that was computer based. So it was kind of a dinosaur, but a new thing all at the same time. And I
Right.
just remember at 16 fighting with this damn curriculum and promising myself that I would achieve a real education. So it was really important to me. So at 16, I made a twofold promise to myself that I would get this education and that I would get a doctorate because I was like, why not aim for the stars if I'm going to aim for the stars, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so at 17, I enlisted into the military because I had no funding to go to school. And there was no way that I was going to get any kind of financial support from my biological family. And so I enlisted with a parent signature. And by the time I um, went off to boot camp, I had just turned 18. And so I spent the next 4.5 years in the military because I was like, I went in for the military education benefits. I met my husband, who is 10 years older than I am, but he's also, at the time, he was law enforcement. So we had that law enforcement sort of parallel universe. Got married and then had a baby. I got out of the military. And it was about that time that all the stuff with my parents it was just getting so bad, and so just like this controlling and this mental abuse and this emotional abuse that was just like an undercurrent my whole childhood was really coming out hardcore. And so it got to be so bad that after I had had our second child, I just could not deal with it anymore because it became so evident to me that my happiness was worth so much more than their approval, because their approval and their love was so conditional that they would only ever tell me that they were proud of me when I was doing what they wanted me to do in the way that they wanted me to do it. And so they didn't like the man that I chose to marry because they didn't see him grow up. I mean, that was like the start of a huge fight, and that just like we didn't talk for a couple years after that cuz they were attacking the person I had already married, and then
Yeah.
just like this manipulation and this control and the just ultimately the brainwashing and the mind that was happening. Like I was a brand new mom and also in my early 20s and a new mom and a new wife and also having to deal with so much. And I also started going to school at that time because education benefits expire when you're using veterans benefits. Most people don't know that. So I was like, I have this timeline I have to, get my schooling in on. And so my 20s were really hard because I was overcoming so much.
Get
That so I was going to school around raising a family and also dealing with all this crap with my biological family. And it just got to be so much that I finally had to ask myself, what is my happiness worth? Is my happiness worth dimming my light for people that claim to love me only when I'm doing what they want me to do? Or is my happiness worth so much more? And my husband and our little family with our two boys, is that worth more? And there was a
yeah.
very pivotal point when I was um, attending my grandmother's funeral in person and back in the Midwest where I grew up. And I had my youngest son with me because I was still nursing him. And we had this huge fight between my biological family and myself because I wasn't performing in the way that they wanted me to and bending over backwards to accommodate them and their schedule when I was like, I'm only here for a short amount of time for this funeral. And I also want to see my best friend who's still here, and I just remember they started yelling at me. It was my paternal person, yelling at me on the phone. And my best friend and I were standing outside this restaurant. We were getting ready to go have lunch when this was happening. And I didn't have the vocabulary for that for so long. I disassociated because I couldn't even focus on what was happening. And it was just like everything around me just went suddenly quiet. And the only thing that I could even focus on was right across the street from us, where my friend and I were standing, was this beautiful bridal shop with the most beautiful gown in the window. And I just remember going, wow, the bride who wears that is going to have such a beautiful and happy life. And it was so interesting to me because as I was getting told what a piece of shit I was for having boundaries, I still remembered that happiness was possible.
That is
And
so unique.
it was the most insane experience because then all of a sudden everything was back on full volume and my paternal kept just rah 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 in my ear. And I just remember just being done. When I signed off on that phone call of goodbye, I love you, I knew in my soul that that would be the last time I ever spoke to them. Because
Yeah.
I was like, I'm never going to be enough. I'm either going to be too much or too little of the wrong thing, and I'm never going to be allowed to be me. I am never going to be supported and loved the way that I need to be. And to this day, they still try to reach out from time to time. And every time I just try to block them because they just try to get through whatever boundaries and filters that I've set up through email and social media blocking because they will never admit that they were wrong and take that
Yeah.
responsibility. And so again, it was just this, it's not me, it's them problem. And I carried that guilt and that shame for a long time because it wasn't until that had happened that my best friend, who I've known since I was 8 years old, who was standing with me that day, she couldn't even speak about it for months because she's like, I had no idea it was that bad.
Like,
She's like,
that's your life.
that was my life. And I was so ashamed about it that I didn't tell anybody because I thought it was me. I was programmed to be the problem, and
From
so I took
4.
that on, and it was just heartbreaking that ultimately I ended up severing connections, not just with my maternal and paternal side of things, but my entire family. So I no longer speak to aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, siblings, like none of them, because I had to take a really big audit of my life and to
Yeah.
be like the people who are influencing them and me, right? Like, I can't pretend to be a half of me with any of them because it's all going to trickle back, right? Like, and then
Mhm.
like, I can't be authentically and genuinely me if I'm continually to dim my light for everybody else. And so I walked away from my entire side of the family, and I like to liken it to I pruned my family tree. Like,
I heard you say that and I was like, damn. But really, though, you did. There's so much here to unpack, and I want to get into some of this with you because
absolutely.
I feel like there is so many avenues we could take with all of this story. And this isn't just a story, this is your life. Like, this is a whole entire dynamic of a life, a soul, a person that's not a story. You can put it in a book, sure. You can speak about it, but the emotional consequences and everything as a human, like to humanize this whole entire experience, is a lot. And I mean, you started at 4 years old understanding this, which is not okay. So I have a 4 year old right now, and by all means, I've never met a more magical person in my life. And I really feel like this is how we all begin. And as you said, your words, you're programmed. You are being programmed. You knew at 4 you were being programmed to be small. You didn't have words. You just felt yucky. If you were acting one way and it wasn't, making your parents happy, it felt yucky. That's your intuition, that gut that we all self abandon. And we move through life learning at a very early age how to self abandon all of this and then make decisions based off of that self abandonment. And you don't even know who you are making decisions anymore, right? So, like, you came in, I wrote some notes because I'm like, there's so much here. But with that, you came in to knowing you wanted school, you wanted to be a doctorate. Like, that was a goal. You knew algebra was hard, but you had zero fear. You went and you sidestepped the financial institution and in a way that it was also not easy going into the Coast Guard, right? And then you're out, you're having kids, you're married, and you're choosing this like radical life that you were programmed in a radical way, being treated this way. And then you have your ease and comfort with your husband in your normal life and your normalcy with friends. And you're confused as all get out. How do you break that chain? Like, how in the moment that bridal shop was like, that was your like your light coming down, like, ah,
Yeah,
like there's happiness out there. I'm just not in it right now. And screw you for making me feel this way.
pretty much. Yeah. There was one moment when we were right in the middle of all of that. And there was just one blow up after another blow up. And at one point I'm standing in the kitchen and I'm making dinner and I'm just inside, and my husband comes home from work and I just go, "This." And he's like, "Oh, we're cursing now? Okay, this." There's just like sometimes you just can't even put it into words, right? Like you just are like, I can't bottle it up anymore. And that's what it became was I could not bottle it up anymore. Is I was not being authentic to who I was meant to be. I knew at a young age I was meant for big things. Like
Mm.
what 4-year-old is starting to go like, yeah, this isn't right. Like what 4-year-old has that kind of, like otherworldly knowledge, but I know that my soul came here to do big things. And I just remember like, once I walked away from my biological family, I was going through school and then I had another betrayal down the line by someone that I really trusted and respected. And that betrayal from that person in my life, he was kind of an authority figure. And I won't go into too much detail with that, but that betrayal was what really prompted me to do the inner work because the biological stuff had happened. And I just shoved it down deep and didn't deal with it. I was just like, yeah, happiness is out there and I'm worthy of that. But I didn't
Yeah.
do the work, you know? And so during the pandemic, when this happened with this other individual, and then I was literally just grappling with this internal war. And I think that betrayal had to happen because otherwise I would have just kept going, kind of skating in some kind of like murky waters that I wasn't like really scared to like swim in, but I wasn't like, yeah, this is like nice sauna water either. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that was really the pivotal point, was now I'm going to sit with this. My anger is really grief. I still grieve for people who are still alive. I
Oh,
have a
yeah.
hard time around the holidays because I do have a handful of really amazing family memories growing up, you know, so there's grief, you know, and you have to hold that space, and you have to do the work to layer by layer come home to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't started that process about 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think I would be where I'm at, where I do feel like I'm truly on my soul's journey. Like, I feel like I've always sort of been connecting the dots, but now it feels joyful. It feels light. It feels like I'm at ease. You know, like I just graduated with my master's program this last June, so just a couple months ago. And for the first time in my life, I'm not striving towards a degree and a credential, and my doctorate is put on hold right now because the whole federal funding issue has got a lot of stuff just not, you know, science is not being funded right now. And so to put a dream that I've had since I was 16 on hold for a little longer, it doesn't feel great inside, but it's also like, what's a couple more years?
You have a master's degree. Did everybody catch that? Like, you've got a master's
I
degree
do.
now, and you
Yep.
went through all of that, what, since 2020?
I've been going to school for 13 years straight. So I've been going to
Okay.
school every summer and term that I could for the
With
last
2
13
kids.
years with 2 kids. Yeah. So it just took me a little longer than most people.
I mean, okay, but it took you and you got it, and a lot of people who go into the military with that mindset of, "I'm gonna do the military just so I can go to school for free." I would love to see that statistic on who actually makes it to the schooling and who gets the master's degree. I'm not even counting the doctorate, like, who does that? You do. I know one person, and
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me. I literally have never met anybody else who did the route that I have done.
No.
Um, it's
I
just not
no.
something that most people think of. And at 16, 17, I just was really resourceful and was like, my greatest resource is my resourcefulness, right? So like,
Absolutely. Number
y-
1.
I've always been able to sort of think abstract. But yes, like to celebrate that accomplishment, that's something that we always just move the goalpost. And so we
Mhm.
never like stand long enough at the end zone and cheer for what we've done, right? And so this is that time and space where I get to also celebrate that I've done these things.
Ooh, I
And
love that. I'm gonna pause that. We
yeah,
moved the goalpost and we don't spend enough time celebrating and cheering for ourselves. Now, that's not just what I would consider something for like education, moving the goalpost for inner work, and we don't even know that we do it. But when we do it, we don't even take the time to celebrate ourselves and be like, look at this.
yeah,
I can now talk about this very traumatic story, cutting these people out of my life and not even phased. And that is how you know you've healed. And you don't have to carry this like baggage anymore. You get to be like standing up and you're just like this soul and you're now aligned and you got to move through and up and see this other dude for what that was and experience that, do more work, graduate in your master's degree, and you're like, I'm breathing.
yeah,
I'm not holding my breath anymore for anything.
yeah.
Like, how cool is that?
It
This
really
is
did feel
awesome.
like that. It felt like for the first time I could breathe again. You know, I just remember like I tried therapy, and two of my people in my life are mental health therapists, and it just didn't quite do what I needed it to do. And the internal work for me came when I started hiking by myself. And I grew up very, very religious, and I'm no longer religious. I'm very spiritual now. As I'm like, I don't need to be in a building to talk to the universe. So I don't say God because that just feels too crunchy for me, too religious aligned. So I say universe. Um, I go out and hike and I talk to the trees and they don't judge me. I can go and cry my face off and I'm not going to get told I'm being too much, right? Like I had to find
Mhm.
the environment where I could heal. I have a very, very supportive and amazing husband. We just celebrated 17 years of marriage together.
Oh,
And
congrats.
thank you. He's my best friend, but there just gets to a point where I'm like, I got to deal with this on my own. And going in and being in those woods was what healed me. Being able to take it apart in the way that I needed to, and with curiosity, with love, and not that judgment and that shame that I had carried for so long. And it was like this one analogy from the brief time that I was with a therapist. She's like, I just see you carrying everybody else's suitcases full of shit. And you need to put their suitcases down. Those are not your things to carry anymore. And I thought, wow, what an amazing analogy of putting down what's not ours to carry and only moving forward with what is ours. And I think that was just such a beautiful thing too. And so the healing work is never done, of course, but
Right.
like you said, like to be able to share my story. I've shared it with a few other people a couple of years ago, and they each in their own way came back to me and said, Caressa, I know that I could get through my stuff because you got through yours, which was so powerful because for so long I was like, why did I have to go through this alone? I never had anybody else that had to do what I had to do. And
Right.
when I decided I wanted to put out my podcast, Badass Thriving, I was like, what's the first story I want to say? I want to share. And I was like, it has to be my story because I need to tell my story. It's not I have to tell it, it's I need to tell it. And I need to do it in a way that feels aligned. I recorded that hiking in the
Yeah.
woods because then my body wasn't freaking out. I was doing something active. And then I was able to really release out my story in a way that felt aligned. And it was so hard to share because it was so vulnerable. And that whole weekend that I had published it on a Friday morning, that whole weekend, I wanted to tear it down.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wanted to tear it down because I was like, it's not too late. Nobody's listened to it yet.
Yeah. I
But
know that feeling. Oh.
because that vulnerability hangover that happened,
Yeah.
I was
It's
like,
real.
but I had to sit with that discomfort because I knew for the greater good that my story will help others, hopefully in a way that feels like I'm maybe giving them a little bit of a roadmap or a map and a flashlight or something where it's a little bit of a survival manual for other people who are also just going through really hard times. So,
So, when you say you went through a lot of this by yourself, but luckily you had your partner, your husband with you, and he's your best friend, your rock. And you went to therapy a little bit here, but your main source, like your main energy, had to be done on your own terms. And I really love to call that out because you chose like going into the woods and that's where you found your main source. Like mine is through yoga and meditation. And I love the fact that it's not the same. Like, oh my God, there's so many avenues people can choose that can provide this self healing. My dad goes fishing by himself. Like, he's got to be out there, and that's him talking to his God, you know? And I love that there are these different modalities. Can you talk to that and what that means for you? Because, like, maybe somebody just doesn't know they could take a hike in the woods. Like, what's that
oh,
like?
yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. So I absolutely love working out. One of my degrees is also in exercise physiology. So I love lifting weights. I love lifting heavy. I was a CrossFit instructor at one time. So, like, some of my best workouts were when I was going through the hardest shit because I could put that out onto the weights, right? You can defer that. But there was something that just like I couldn't fully process at that intensity. Like, you can put anger out into the weights, right? Like, you can defer that, but there was something that I needed to be able to wander in the woods for hours. And I would bring all my rain gear. I'd bring a backpack full of snacks and water, and I'd bring my journal, and I would just wander, and I would rant at the universe because there was something about the time to get to where I needed to go, which was nowhere, right? Like, I didn't have a destination. You can only lift weights for so long before you're like, okay, my everything is tired and sore. But there was something about, I live in Oregon, so I live on the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of beautiful mountains out here. Lucky enough that there's some beautiful nature trails just a couple miles from us. And they're like mountain biking trails. And so they're relatively well groomed. Um, and the nastier the weather, the better. So then I'm out there and it's just me. It's
Mhm.
just me because when I was going through that second part of my journey where I had that betrayal and I shared with a couple of different friends what was happening, I was judged really harshly. And I was like, I don't feel safe, like telling this part of this story to anybody that I consider a friend because now I felt like the people that I could trust turned on me. So I was like, who
Mm.
can I talk to? I can talk to the trees. The trees are not going to, give me whatever. And there was just something about being in the green, in the forest, in the deep woods where I see elk and I see squirrels and the birds and I mean just there's something so soothing about being in the woods anyway, like being in nature. And it just it would take me probably 4 miles before I could turn off the chatter that was happening in my head of all the the ego and the programming and the biological, voices that were going on and to actually find some kind of peace because it just couldn't turn it off. Like there was no switch. That was the best thing I could find to find relief to that because like I'm a very like analytical minded abstract. I can think very abstract. I can do like all these amazing things, but I'm like I needed to get out of my own head and back into my soul, back into my body, back to
Yeah.
feeling present. And the best thing that I could do was just start journaling and just as fast as I could write,
Oh, yeah.
and meditation. And so it's like I had to get all the crap out of my head before I could meditate because I just couldn't get past that surface layer of of all the chaos. And so I feel like I can tap into it a lot faster now when I am just sitting in my room and meditating. But it took a lot of work to get there because
Oh,
there was
yeah.
just so much in the dumpster that I had to
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah, it's like a love muscle too, you gotta flex it before you can
Exactly.
use it, you know? So, yeah, absolutely, and, that is beautiful, and I totally feel like I've lived some of these, like, just going out into the woods. It's just,
Yeah.
and finding that, like, until it's clear enough to just sit with yourself for a bit. Absolutely. So, I have some questions, and this could be a whole entire podcast, but I wanna ask just to braise the surface. You knowing how you were so programmed and so deep into having to be somebody you knew inherently that you weren't, how did that affect you when you turned into your own motherhood? And did you notice how things were basically being transmitted into your own kids from what you experienced?
Absolutely. I mean, it is shocking to me. The work is never done with, your own internal healing. And there are moments that it just creeps back up. in the moment of getting whatever happening with my kids, so I have 2 sons. I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old, and, um, reparenting myself at the same time that I am being a parent is one of the hardest things that I've done ever. It's in the moment I get triggered, and oftentimes I can acknowledge that it's happening, and I can stop whatever internal crap is coming up, and I can, transmute that into something much better than the old programming. And there's been a few times where it's just crept out and I just didn't realize it. And I actually remember this happening. I'm trying to remember when it was. I think it was this spring, early this spring. My oldest son was doing pre-algebra, and he came home needing to do his homework. He doesn't get homework very often, but I was trying to help him also navigating all of my internship that I was going through as a dietitian, and so I was just like maxed the hell out, and we're sitting there, it's getting later and later, and I'm like trying to get him to finish his algebra, and I'm trying to remember some of these like pre-algebra equations. It's been a little bit since I've done that, right? And I said something. It just slipped out where I said something derogatory in a way of like, well, you should just know already. Like just something that way, and I was mortified because it just came out.
Oh.
There was no filter, and I'm normally so good at filtering. And I apologized to him, but and he didn't think anything of it, but I did. And I sat with that night, and I was like, "Whoa, why the hell did that come out like that?" And I realized because at pre-algebra age, right, 12, 13, I stopped being parented. So that didn't realize was a trigger for me. And I remember being told, well, why don't you just understand this already? And it was
Oh.
just so awful to feel that. And I had a good conversation with my son the next day. I apologized again. And he was like, I just thought you were joking. And I was like, that's not how I joke. And you know that. And he's like, no, I know. And I was like, I explained because he knows my story the best that my children can understand it. I've given them, some of that info.
Yeah.
But um it was so heartbreaking to me because no kid should ever be told that, and to be made feel like, well, if you don't know this, you're just a complete shit. You're just so stupid, and that's how
Right.
I've been made to feel. And it was really, really sad. And I recognized that that was a trigger that I just didn't even know was a trigger. I mean, like being disrespected is one of my biggest triggers. And so when my 9-year-old is not following his chore chart and he's giving me all the grief about it, and I have to sit there and hold that space knowing I'm being disrespected, I start feeling the like prickle in my scalp, and I start getting kind of like angsty inside. I have to go, okay, we're going to sit with this, right? This is your trigger, and we know this. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take some deep breaths before I respond. Because if I respond right now, I'm going to bite his head off. And I can't come from a place of being regulated. Like, I can't. I'm going to be reactive instead. And so I think just more internal work that I have done, the more awareness I have brought to that for myself. Nobody else can tell me, oh, Caressa, you're about to get triggered, right? Like, I have to sit with that. I have to know, okay, we're tiptoeing into dangerous territory here. And I have to use communication to my best of my ability to say, I'm feeling disrespected now. I don't feel like you're being loving and kind to me right now. This doesn't feel nice to me inside, right? Like my 9-year-old, he's a very, I call him, he's feral. He's a little bit wild. So I have to try to rein that back in to be like, okay, buddy, we need to have a conversation on how you're making mom feel right now because your actions affect other people. Right. So it's also like trying to navigate how am I feeling, but also parenting at the same time. Like it is so hard. It is
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah, I was like, "Wow, the many hats and masks that I have to wear in a day." I'm exhausted, it's
It's
9 o'clock.
yes, it's exhausting. Um, but I think it's also just giving so much grace. Last night
Yeah,
they didn't want to do the dishes after my husband and I made dinner together. It was like, all right, you guys are on cleanup duty. And it got a little testy right before bedtime. And just like, okay, tomorrow's a better day. There's no mistakes in it yet.
mhm,
Right. Like everybody's held to the same, like, we're human, we have hard days. Some days are easier, some days are harder. Tomorrow's a brand new day. We'll come back together as a team. That's a lot too that we talk about is like we are all team here. Like it's not mom and dad and then two kids. It's we are
yeah.
all a team working together because I don't want to do all the housework myself. Like that's not fair. You guys are messier than I am.
Right? We do that with Theo too, and it is a team. It's been a team with I mean, I've had the parents that taught that too, but the fact that you get to have that and you pass it down, but I will say, like, I'm I have a parent that didn't get the same team mentality growing up, and now she's coming in and she put that in, instilled it with my family and my dad and my brother, and we have always been that way. So I will say from an adult standpoint that had a parent experience, not to your depths by any means, but like the hardships with their own things, I will say you're doing a good job.
Oh,
All
thank
that
you.
to say you're doing a good job.
I received
And
that. Thank you.
you're phenomenal with what you've been able to accomplish, and I'm sure your kids see that. Your education, your continuous to do your self-help, and then bringing that into the family. What do you have? What else you got going on? Like, you're just like you are a magic person. 444, Friday the 13th. There's more.
It's so interesting right now in this period of time because it occurred to me, like the last couple of weeks, I put my podcast on hold for a little bit. I needed to pause. I did 10 episodes for the first season and it brought me so much joy. And I was studying for my dietitian exam. And so there was just a lot happening over the summer. And so when my kids got back to school, I just realized I was so freaking exhausted. And I was like, wow, like I haven't actually taken a minute to breathe and to pause and to fully sit in what I've just done. It's been my goal since I was 16 and I've actively been working through all of this for so long. And, my doctorate is on hold for who knows how long, but it's going to happen. We just don't know, right? Like when I'm not in charge
Mhm.
of the timing around here. Um, and so for the first time in 21 years, I have so much blank space on my calendar that to sit with that is really uncomfortable because I'm used to being so busy all the time that I have to sit and remind my nervous system it's safe to rest. Right? Like I for the last 2 weeks have barely worked out because I've just been to this exhaustion burnout point and then I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on the verge of getting sick." And so I was like, "All right, I need extra rest. I need to just those really light walks and yoga and meditation and those things that feel like joy again." Cause I'm like, nothing feels joyful right now. Everything feels
Mhm.
heavy. Right? Like everything feels so heavy. So I'm like, what feels like joy to me? And so I am really trying to that's my filtration system right now is what feels like a full body 100% hell yes, what feels like joy and like putting those little moments of joy together like they're the little connect the dots, and to just be like what next thing feels aligned to me right now. And it's one of those things like I'm trying to get my private practice up and running and moving forward and I'm wondering what I want to do with my podcast, but like I'm not putting pressure on myself for it. I'm going to let it breathe so that I can come back feeling rejuvenated and refreshed because I know I have so much to give that if I'm not careful, I'm going to keep burning myself out. And those are just my passion projects, let alone my career path, right? Like I'm also trying to like figure out what that looks like. And, could be something in the near future. I don't know, right? And so there's like just playing with the possibilities at the moment just feels really fun. It's I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and that's okay.
I love it. I love that so much. I mean, and to honor that and honor the balance, considering we did just start our Libras season, which
Yeah.
is my favorite because it's also my birthday season. But who is that? But and the balance is so necessary, I think, to be able to even move forward. And I think the being caught up and acknowledging that you are caught up is like such a powerful move to say, wow, my life, I'm a little bit sick. I might be on the verge. I need to take a break. Like, I need to take a break. And I feel like this is something that you've been able to hone in on since you were 4, probably before. Like, you're an intuitive, balanced person anyway, which is amazing.
And it's so interesting that you bring that up because when I was little, being told those things, I felt like I wasn't intuitive for a long time because I was told basically to shut that part of me off.
Mhm.
And when my intuition was muted, if you will, for a long time, it wasn't until that stuff with someone I considered a mentor and a friend who betrayed me. My intuition was so loud that I had to get the hell out of that particular event as soon as possible. And so it's even when you think like you're so far removed from who you were, you're no longer aligned with your soul in that way, right? When it counted, it was there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so loud, and it was the quietest thing, and it was the loudest thing, and it was in me and around me all at the same time where I felt the back of my hair prickle. Like, there was stuff that I was like, "Whoa," And so I think it's just a reminder of our soul is kind of just sitting there. It's the guardian angel, it's the guardrails. It's still there even if we think we have departed so far from it. It's still there, It's only just a
Yeah.
breath away. And then when it counts, it's loud. And so I think that was such a beautiful thing too, to feel like I wasn't as far away from home as I thought I was. And then I just kept coming home.
That is awesome. That's literally the message in the bottle of this whole entire thing, your whole entire life. Like, it is when it counts, it's there. It gets loud on every platform. I feel like on every single thing, even in my own life, I can't deny myself saying I've never been intuitive. No, it was there, and I've self-abandoned. I've, like, turned my shoulder. I've, like, went the other way on purpose and landed flat on my face. But when it counted and it was like, "Get out, wake up, here it is. How much more clear can I get?" It's so there. And yeah, we have this guardian angel, like you said, like, that is our soul. That is our intuition. That is who is speaking to us.
Yep.
I
That
love that.
yeah.
Yeah. Wrap that up and put that in a podcast, and then we will send that out.
Well, you can come in. You can come over and we'll keep circling back because I think there's just so many things that you can take apart, and it just comes back to some of the same messaging. Of just
Mhm.
why are we here, right? That's always the question. What am I doing here? But it's
Yeah.
like we're here to live a joyful life. We're here to find happiness, and happiness doesn't isn't the opposite of depression. Happiness is where we find our purpose and where we feel like we can make an impact
Mhm.
in those around us. And that brings a lot of just fulfillment. So everybody's a little
Yeah.
different. So that's not as easy for everybody to answer. But yeah, I feel like the lightest that I've ever been for
That is
this whole
beautiful.
mantra this year has been let it go, let it flow, and let it be at ease. And that's what I've been trying to lean into.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love that, Caressa. I love everything you just said. I really did breathe that in and it was like totally it. And I wonder, how can people find you? How can we support you in your dietitian? You said you want to open your own practice. How can we support you moving forward?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So I am starting my own private practice. It's called A is for avocados because there's the ABCs of nutrition.
That's
So I am
awesome.
taking one-on-one nutrition clients. I have a 16-week program with exercise and fitness already all programmed in, and we work week by week through a lot of different systems and structures that need to go into making lifestyle changes. So my website is aisforavocados.com. I also have the Badass Avocado newsletter, so you can subscribe to that. And my podcast is Badass Thriving Podcast. You can find me on Apple and Spotify. I'm also on social media, Badass Thriving Podcast or Caressa R. Dunphy. So you can find me in multiple different ways and multiple different avenues. Hopefully, will help you in whatever journey you're on.
That is perfect. I'm going to put all that in our show notes. So I will have all of that available for our listeners today. And I just want to thank you so much for your courage and coming up with full heart, putting this all out there, full authenticity, and to be able to really teach us something today was a different way to heal and how to tune into your intuition. I mean, those are so powerful. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and sharing the love.
You're welcome. It was such an honor to chat with you today. I feel so supported. So thank you for just having such a lovely conversation.
Absolutely. All right. I'll put you out there on our show notes. Caressa Dunphy, everybody.